questions. How's it going, man?
Good, good, thanks.
Good. Okay. So first question up, what are your favorite build and deploy tools?
There's a lot of them out there these days. We at Sparkbox use a tool called Circle CI that's available as a both on-premise and in the cloud. It's always been pretty simple to work with. Travis has always been really cool. I think GitHub Actions today is creating some interesting opportunities to do some neat things. There's a lot of really cool tools out there. I think the way that we're deploying software today has changed a little bit. Some folks are out there trying to use things like Docker or containers. And at the end of the day, what I look for is a pipeline that allows me to have consistency and like kind of repetition so that I know that I'm doing things similarly across the pipeline. If I can get out of a build, one thing that I can deploy many places, maybe it's pre-production or production, like that's definitely the thing I'm looking for.
Yeah, I love that. So with that, what are some diagramming tools that you like?
Yeah. There's not a lot of great ones out there from an experience perspective, but what I'm not looking for a lot of bells and whistles in these things. If I can draw it on a whiteboard and it helps for everybody, that's great. A lot of times those don't translate to times like now where we're separated physically and things like that. Draw.io is a really nice one. We like that because it saves those diagrams out to Google Drive, and it just kind of falls into place with the rest of our project's assets. You can do a lot of this stuff just in things like Keynote or PowerPoint. Honestly, it's pretty easy to do it that way. Some of the different drawing tools that are out there. I'm not looking for anything super complex. If I can draw a circle or a square, put some text in there, and maybe draw a line between two things, that's probably 90% of what I need.
I've seen both of yours and I's art scale. There's a reason they don't let us near anything
Yes.
more complex than lines and boxes.
Yep. Give me some pretty colors, and that's about as far as you're going to get.
That might be a bit much. I've seen what we do with them.
Yep.
So what kinds of things do you like to measure coming out of your process?
So this is tough for a company like us for Sparkbox because we work in a lot of different environments. I think if you're working in a product team or inside of an organization that has a pretty consistent ecosystem, so we might work with a client and we'll use our GitHub repos and our build pipeline and things like that, or we might engage with a different client and use their own internal infrastructure. Maybe it's GitLab or Bitbucket and things like that. I'm looking for a couple things. The simplest one for me is like, how often are we deploying? Are we doing that on a pretty frequent basis? We use tools like Rollbar and New Relic to record those kinds of things, but hopefully all these metrics are kind of natural to the process. And so what we do is we codify those things into the process. So how, we report our deploys to Rollbar, and I can kind of take a look at how often if a project's not deploying very frequently, I know we're building up assumptions over the course of that time. And that's something that I want to avoid. I want to validate assumptions along the way. I might look at things like the age of PRs, kind of average age of PRs. The same folks that build out Code Climate that we described there a little bit ago, they also build a product out there that allows you to measure the age of PRs and things like that, because you don't want these problems kind of spinning off for a long period of time and not getting integrated back, because you never know how well those things are going to integrate together. Some of the other things is, how often, from a team health perspective, are they integrating their own thoughts? Or are they working well together? What's the process look like? I look at what's the cadence of the team getting together and meeting. Maybe they're not doing daily stand-ups, that's okay. But if they're not also getting together to kind of look at the backlog, plan things out, a lot of times they can get off track and start building maybe the wrong thing, which is really, really scary and really, really expensive. But if you're not integrating with or getting together as a team, if you're not talking to the clients, the people that you're building software for, or you're not getting real engagement from them, maybe showing up to demos or things like that, it can be real easy to get off track and start building the wrong thing.
Awesome. So, question from Mike: how much time do you allot for technical vision? I understand it might depend on the stakeholder. However, do you have your own rules you follow before moving on to the next part of a project?
Yeah, that's a really good question because a lot of this stuff can feel like overhead, right? It can feel pretty expensive. I think every project's a little different. You know, if you're only putting something together for 3, 4 months, 5 months, worth of work, it's a smaller project. Sometimes those discoveries as a whole are only a day or so, right? So it's not 3 weeks worth of effort and like all this time and effort and money. It can be a day's worth of discovery, and maybe it's a 1, 2 pager that says, these are some of the things that we care about. These are some of the areas in the technology we're going to focus on. This is some of the tech we're going to put together. And now all of a sudden in a day or two, you've got some, you got some good focused guidelines around which the team can build out. If this is, a pretty big project, we might spend a little more time at a part of discovery. And so, that might take a couple extra days or even a week for us to vet out some ideas, some thoughts, and how they might integrate. We might have to talk to some other teams and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Does this work for you? Would this approach work? At the end of the day, we want to do just enough to get going. And once we're out there, that's where the continuous part comes in, right? We get enough to give us guide rails and a direction to point, and now we're going to do this stuff continuously as a part of building to kind of stay ahead of the work that's coming. And we're talking together with PMs. Maybe it's other teams other teams that are building out things that we depend on. Those are some of the things that we're going to look at. As far as the team within, like maybe let's say you've got a week worth of work that you're getting ready to do, and you want to start planning out the following weeks or something like that worth of work, or maybe 2 weeks. I'd expect a handful of hours from a tech lead or a few people on the team to say, hey, this is the type of work that we want to do. The product owner, the PM, things like that are they care about us building out in the next couple of weeks. Here's how that might fit into the architecture. Here's where we might need to change things. These are some of the cards we might need to build out. Hey, this one changes pretty significantly, this API. Let's talk about what those contracts look like, and how we might build that out. What does the data look like? Do we need to make any changes to the way we deploy? They're just kind of thinking about those things and making notes about all that stuff. It doesn't have to take one person's time at full, or even 2 people's time, full time, over the course of the week to get ready for a next week. It can be a couple of hours over the course of a week.
Awesome. So regarding Austin's talk a little bit about tech leads earlier, so what do you see as the role of a PM in helping support the technical lead?
Yeah, when I look at what a PM's role is, a lot of times our PMs are working with clients or people who care about software, but haven't really been a part of the software process. They've not built software. They know what they want. They have a vision. They have a plan for what they want to do from maybe a business perspective, but they've never been a part of this software process. And so the PM is kind of shepherding or guiding those folks along in this process. And they're helping them make decisions about what's important, what things cost, or how hard they are to put together, so that they can make informed decisions about where they get the biggest bang for their buck, or what is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And so when our tech lead is working with our PM, they're trying to communicate those things back and forth. So the PM is kind of helping them understand, here's where we are, here's how much budget we might have, here's how much time we might have to a big event. Maybe they're looking to hit a big conference or something, or show it off, and they've got a big opportunity. And you're balancing options. And so, as a tech lead, as people who understand, and this can be individuals on the team. It doesn't necessarily have to always be, the tech lead. It can be just development team members as well. They're helping work together with the PM as kind of right hand, left hand, in making decisions that benefit the ultimate goal, which is to build something that's useful for somebody else.
So talk a little bit about what technical leadership looks like at Sparkbox. How many tech leads are there? How somebody wants to know kind of how all that's structured and how we do things.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I mentioned in there was like technical leaders are always kind of creating other leaders, right? I think that's something I did not coin that phrase by any stretch of the imagination, but I heard it a long time ago, and it really stuck with me. And I think part of that is empowering people to make decisions, which is all about, is kind of the underlying theme with regards to our tech leads' responsibilities, creating technical vision and things like that. It's empowering people to make decisions on the team. And so I think leadership at our team spans our whole team, right? Everybody is responsible for these projects from a technical perspective. Our tech lead is there to kind of help folks to make sure that the process is working well, to provide experience and leadership and guidance and things like that. But at the end of the day, we all own it, right? Because this is as we've said, I think a number of folks have said today, software doesn't fail for technical reasons; it fails for people reasons. And so we all own this thing. Our tech lead is there to kind of like maybe step up a little bit on the vision of the project and ask ourselves, are we step out of the day-to-day coding needs and ask, are we heading in the right direction? Are we working really well? From a number of tech leads perspective, I think we're probably around maybe a dozen folks who've acted as a tech lead on our projects. I think it's important to note that at Sparkbox, tech lead is not like a title. It's not something that you become and you stay forever necessarily. It's based on a project, right? It's a project role, and it can change throughout projects. It's kind of nice because it allows us to put folks in a position to be successful, let them have their hand at it for a little while, learn some of those things, be mentored by other folks, gaining some experience in those situations that are right for them, right? And maybe it matches their background. And we can take folks who've only been in software maybe for a couple of years and say, hey, this is a project, you've done things like this before. Let's give you an opportunity to tech lead this area of this project or this project for a little while. Give it a try. You've got some mentors around you to support you. We've got some guidance for you. And then, they can build that experience up over time. It also gives us flexibility. We do have a kind of a career ladder, a career framework here, and tech lead is in that ladder. But it's not something that once you're a tech lead, always a tech lead on every project.
Yeah, no, that's great. So just with the same question we ask everybody, asked all the other speakers today, is like, who are you relying on? Who are you reading? What are your resources? We stand on the shoulders of giants, and like there are so many smart people out there, and the web is such a cool place. And like my favorite part about a lot of this is like some of my things that I like to read when it comes to some of the software stuff, like is, 30, 40 years old almost at this point.
It really is. I mean, there are a lot of really cool things that are happening in software today. There's a lot of banter about microservices, and there's cool tools and frameworks out there. Cloud is something that everybody's trying to fit into their architecture if they're not already using in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of the things that those technologies are based on have been done before in some ways, right? Some of the coolest libraries and frameworks are implementing things that have been around for a long time. So I don't think there shouldn't be any hesitation in reading some older architecture guidance and techniques and learning about projects that have been built a long time ago. Some folks that I like to read and have found a lot of value in, Martin Fowler. He's been around for a long time. He's got some great books out there, and his website's fantastic. The whole industry is kind of indebted to the work he's done. Now I know he does that to help build up his work and his business and things like that, and they're really successful over there. But Martin Fowler's website, he's got a great book called Patterns of Enterprise Application Architecture. All of that doesn't apply to every project, but I think it's really interesting to give those things a try and read. Eric Evans created some really good content around what would be called domain-driven design. I think domain-driven design is a great book for learning the ways that you can articulate software to people, right? And break things down to break a complex project or problem down into smaller bits. So he's got a great book out there. Actually, Microsoft's Azure Architecture Center is fantastic. So Microsoft has, they have Azure, AWS has a lot of this types of content too, but I love the way that Microsoft's Azure Architecture Center presents a lot of, they focus on the cloud side of things, but all those techniques out there can be applied on premise too and things like that. There's a really awesome book. I actually have it sitting here with me. It's called Accelerate by Jez Humble and Nicole Ferguson. Forsgren. I'm sorry, I said that name incorrectly. I think that book is fantastic for those who are trying to create a healthy software development organization. I think it gives some really interesting guideposts and insights. They've been doing the DevOps survey for a couple of years now, and that this provides some kind of, I don't know what, something of a model for what a healthy organization looks like. Getting there is a different question. That's something that we're working on here. Is like, how do you transition an organization to a healthy organization? But if you want to know what healthy organizations look like, I think that's a great piece of content. The open source community is actually pretty fantastic at this stuff. They have unique constraints, right? These are folks that can only work on certain problems every once in a while. They're rarely getting together. They're very disparate, experiences. You're looking to get folks involved in your project. In order to do that, you have to be able to communicate what you want to build and what the vision of your project is in a really clear way in written form. And it has to be sustainable, I guess. That content has to be sustainable in order for the project to be sustainable. You'll see a lot of pretty big projects use this idea of RFPs and that they describe, and they're basically GitHub issues sometimes that just outline this is what we're thinking about. Here's how we're thinking about building it, and then there's just a litany of discussion that happens after that. So I think getting in, kind of reading or following some neat open source projects. As it turns out, folks may not remember this particular framework now that React is so popular, but the Ember community was wonderful at this. The way that they navigated or the way that they have navigated that architecture and that change and things like that has been awesome.
Yeah, they're definitely doing that part of it right. It's pretty cool. So here's a question for you. If you had to pick the perfect, and I have a problem with this question a little bit, perfect tech stack for a brand new web app, what are you reaching for these days? What are we reaching for?
Oh my. We end up doing some of this stuff with clients, and I think we do it a lot. Like just about every one of our tech strategies that we put together with clients is us trying to figure out what's right for them. So I think that's got to start off first, is what's right for you. So I don't know that there is a perfect tech stack for everybody out there. We just got done, early this year, late last year, helping a client get into a new market, right? They were trying to build a product, get into a new market. And we were saying, it's about speed. It's about getting value out there for these folks. And they don't have a giant customer following yet. So we just need to help them get into the market. And for us, that turned out to be a productivity framework, kind of like a Rails. For us, we use Sales.js. So that's Node, and it's not a React-based front end or anything like that, but it allowed us to, model the data that they needed really quickly. It allows us to deploy really quickly. It allows us to build out functionality really quickly, and it got us to market, right? And we deployed all of that early on in Heroku, and it was great, right? We had really quick deploys. We had really quick feedback loops. We could get it out to folks. It had all the things we needed. We plugged in New Relic and Rollbar, and everything was going within like maybe a week, if that. And then we work with some other clients that are, really large enterprises, and there maybe we do something a little different. We're building out a pattern library, or maybe we're doing that with React. Maybe they're going to target multiple device, ecosystems. So they're building iOS native apps, and then as well as web platforms, or we're integrating with those. And there it's, we're building out APIs with a React front end and a pattern library in React and things like that. I do think React does, from a front end perspective, encourage really good software patterns of breaking complex problems down into little bits. So.
Yeah, I love the focus on shipping. Like, can't be valuable until you're available.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So what are some, you talked a lot about process and communication loops and cadence and all that. Talk a little bit about some red flags that can happen in that process to let you know things aren't good. Because that's part of it too, is keeping your pulse on all this, I assume.
For sure. I think I think the easiest one for me, so I mentioned we do demos, right? So I think that's been really nice for us with clients, but it also is really nice for us. Um, one of the reasons it's really nice for us is we can find if we're always rushing to get to a demo, it means we're not maybe at a healthy pace, right? It means we're trying to smush too much stuff in, and we're rushing to get into the end of demos. So like, if we feel like it's not healthy getting into demos, that can be painful. One of the other ones is our ability, our ability to demo. So if we see that our teams are demoing a lot locally and not on a deployed space, because hey, it wasn't merged, or but I want to show it because it's cool. Those can be some signs of the process is not healthy, and that's where it really goes to this idea of, are we deploying frequently, right? Do we have a place to get things out, and is it natural to the process to get things deployed frequently? I think that's one of the biggest red flags. Um, if we don't have a team that's meeting regularly to talk about the vision, and we don't have a good healthy cadence there, I think that can be a problem. Not having any insight into the project. So if you were to say, hey, how if you were to ask the team, hey, show me how some of the value stream metrics and how those align since some of the last deploys. They don't have to necessarily be reporting deploys, but say, hey, we deployed on Monday and we deployed 2 weeks ago, and here's how some of those value stream metrics, maybe it's number of sign-ins or number of checkouts or something like that, whatever it is. If we can't look at those over time and ask ourselves, how are we doing? I think that can be a challenge or a red flag on an active product that's being deployed.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's the time we have for questions. There's a few other questions. We'll make sure we get to those and answer those, and make sure we get the answers out there. Thanks, Ryan. So for Ryan's follow-up, I know Ryan touched a lot of his presentation, and we know that some of you may want to dig into really specific topics that he's got there. So we're going to set up some group discussions for those of you who want to continue that. There's a form here that you can set up some time with Ryan individually, or with other members of your team, or with some other groups. So Ryan, anything else to say about that?
No, I'm looking forward to talking to folks and hearing about some of the challenges that they have, and answering some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Always
Thanks, all.
appreciated.